In India, for instance, everybody knows everything. Every candidate in India knows, Güte Siegel, I'm not paying you anything. If you don't bring me fast, I'm going to the next agency. I know that. I don't owe you any money. Every candidate knows that. Even if we were to give loans in Nigeria, right, then you need to look at women are less risky than men.
Okay.
Women tend to pay more. Married women, they're more reliable than married men. Married women with children are more reliable than married women without children. The big problem that we have, like Nigeria and Cameroon, let's say, is the WHO list. That's why the markets there are not as developed as elsewhere. The agencies have no interest in even touching 10-foot pole those countries.
Hi everyone. Hi Shane. Happy New Year to you.
Hi Mike. Happy New Year to you. It's been
good a while. To see you again.
Likewise.
So guys, today Shane and I, we're going to be talking about one of the key challenges when it comes to relocation. And this is something people often don't talk about. Shane and I were chatting some days ago and we were talking about the emotional stress and trouble that people undergo when they think about the financial aspect of relocating. And I'm getting some new information which we're going to talk about today. And before we proceed, I'll let Shane introduce himself briefly and also the key points or part of what we will talk about today. Shane.
Hello everyone. Again, I'm Shane, founder and CEO of Work Abroad software solution that enables agencies and employers to hire, relocate and integrate candidates from anywhere in the world to Germany, right? So say truck drivers, train operators, crane operators, even any manner of a profession. So today we're going to be talking about financing your relocation. We were talking about just off the camera, and it's implied in every aspect of it, right? There needs to be financing for everything that happens for it to be done well, for it to be done fast. So we'll talk about a few things that are happening in this space here.
I find it exciting because I think finance is the major bottleneck when it comes to relocation. Most other things people can easily solve them, right?
Yeah, well, housing is another tough one that you cannot really solve.
Even when you have the money.
Even when you have the money, right? Yeah, exactly. Especially when you even when you have the money, because then it's more annoying because it's not it's just demand and supply. So housing is a big one, especially if you're outside the country. It's difficult to be able to solve for your future housing. But yeah, that also includes financing is part of it. So many people solve them in various ways. Generally speaking, for the sub-Saharan African diaspora like ourselves, it's just family help, almost always family help. People putting their hands together and making it possible for you to relocate. People also go to credit unions. I remember one time in Cameroon, I said to myself and I went to a credit union to cash it, Western Union transfer, and she pushes this flyer into my view and it's a loan. And they lie, of course, right? They tell you, hey, it's 2% interest, but of course it's 2.4% interest per month. They don't tell you that, right? They just sort of, because their customer base or the people who walk in there are not, I assume they're not the most savvy around these things, right? So effectively what they're selling you, it's an interest rate that is higher than credit card interest rate in the West. So you're paying 30% compound interest per year. So people do that. Parents would do that sort of assure their children have a safe or more predictable future. And to be fair to them, the math still adds up, right? I was telling you, I was in a conference just before coming here, and somebody gave an example. So the number that was thrown out was for candidates from Uganda, the lifetime value of a relocation is over €1 million. So staying in Uganda, like your life, right? Yeah, like you moving from Nigeria to here, the delta in what you earn here over your lifetime and in Nigeria is at least €1 million, right?
Okay.
Some mothers would say she doesn't really care if the interest rate on the credit union loan is 500%. So it still adds up.
So should people be excited about what we're going to tell them today? Is there something new? Is there something they can look forward to?
Yeah, there's quite a bit they can look forward to. There's been a lot of development in the market, and most of it from East Africa or from Eastern Africa. They have it way better than us, the rest of us in Central and Western Africa. They have a lot more opportunity, I would say, on average. It starts there and then hopefully wafts over to us. And also a few things that are based here in Germany or Europe, right, that people can look towards here.
So tell us, what is Work Abroad working on now in this regard, and what can people look forward to?
Obviously, financing is a big issue. And then not just for the candidates, right, for the employers and for the agencies as well. Don't think of an employer, they do want you to arrive stress-free and as motivated as possible. They don't want you to have a massive debt. Best case, they don't want you to have a massive debt that you need to pay back immediately.
Why do they care?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question, because it's very cultural, right? I was talking to somebody I know, and he sort of networks around people, the corridors to Europe, to Germany, and also to the Middle East, GCC as they call it. And he said GCC, they care a lot less about how they want speed, right? So relocating to Dubai or Qatar, it's about speed. The most important thing is how quickly can you get these workers here. Right? They don't really care about the condition, or they care less, let me say, about the condition. But here in Germany, which is, or the DACH region, which is what I'm most familiar with, the employers have this certainly have a very, very strong interest in making sure you are not indebted, that you are motivated. It's just, we have better workers, you have more motivated workers, and you'll be there for long. Remember, any business person, any finance person, let's say, wouldn't be thinking about your productivity over the first, when you arrive, it's how long can you be there for. Everything is at least midterm, right? What's the lifetime value? What's the value of this employee over the next, during the period when they're working here, not how quickly they can come, or it's not short-sighted. It's, they want you to remain for 3 years, they want you to remain for 5 years, they want you to remain for, and things like that.
And essentially you're going to be more productive, which adds more to the company. And it's a longer term win for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the idea anyway, the theory.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. What is happening in East Africa that we from West Africa and Central Africa do not have?
A lot.
In the same Africa. From.
To be fair, it's a massive continent.
Yeah.
But East African relocation market, let's say, it's significantly easier than the Western and Central African relocation market. Not just because of the ease of getting visas, etc., but also because they have a lot more financial instruments to make it possible, right?
Interesting. I used to think they have better, say, political relationship with the West.
They do. They're also more westernized, just in general. I think most of them would agree. The European colonizers were there a bit longer on average.
Yeah.
Some of them were even there until the 90s, right? In the case of South Africa. Namibia, it's effectively, Malawi, those are very westernized societies. So they have a different basis, for better and for worse. So we're talking about financing. So candidates in Eastern Africa have a few more options that we don't have in the West. You can think, I was talking about Malengo. Malengo is a non-profit, which I'm quite familiar with. They have an example of an income share agreement. For students, there are a number of financing possibilities, not just around the world, right? If you cannot afford your tuition fees, they're called income share agreements. Income share agreements, basically a contract that say, I'll give you money now for your upfront costs, and you pay me back when you start working, when you gain full employment, and you're earning above a certain threshold, and you pay me back a certain amount of money a month.
Okay. If you got 10K, are you going to pay 10K back at the end?
No,
a little bit more?
No, it's just that will be burning money, right? So if you got 10K, you have to pay back depending on what the agreement is, depending on your risk profile, depending on what the country you're coming from, depending on, even in developing our own ISA, which we'll get to in a bit, we need to take into consideration, right? We need to make sure that there's so many factors, so many attributes of the person which need to flow into that model to determine how much you can give them, what repayment window you can give them, repayment rate, or how much you need to pay you back, etc. So it flows into it. So it's very common with students. I think ISAs originated in the US because, again, they are not alone. They are different financial instrument or financial instrument. They have different terms, different conditions, different regulation surrounding them. I forgot what the company is called. I want to say it was Brain in the US, and they'll give these candidates these loans to learn technology skills, right? To learn how to code, and then help them find work, and then they'll repay them when they started earning, right? So that lasted for a while, but then it ended up not being so great because, obviously incentives are the way they are, and then you start giving candidates too much money because you want back a lot of repayment, right? Not interest. So it began over there, but we have it here as well in Europe quite a bit. We have things like Brain Capital, or providers like Brain Capital. They give you money for if you have entrance into like a top university, so INSEAD and the top expensive universities, and you cannot afford it, then in some cases they'll give you an ISA. So you have like different focuses for this. So Brain Capital is like for those. You have lenders, which is generally, they've been around 5 years. They don't quite care what university you're going to. It's just, you need to be doing a master's degree, preferably a 1-year master's degree, and in a good field. So there's so many attributes of the candidate that determine whether you actually get the money or not, right? You need to be in a field where they can forecast your wage development, etc. So you have all of these things happening in Africa. In labor mobility, very few people have actually taking the step to provide these services, right, to us Africans to move abroad, because the local financial institution is looking at, they need local collateral, they need local circumstances, they need understanding of what's happening locally. As soon as you say, I'm taking a loan to go somewhere, it's the risk profile.
You're gone. How do we get our money back?
Exactly. How do I get my money back? I don't even know what you mean. Why would I give you my money? So, and of course, there's a philanthropist, as they would often do. Again, they have their own incentives, they have their own motivations, but they get involved and they try to make certain things happen, right? And so there have been some recent developments in the space, and we work abroad are working on, or work abroad advance, which would be an income share agreement for workers and apprentices who are relocating to Germany.
Good stuff. Good stuff, guys. I think you can look forward to something good now, because this would essentially take out one of the major bottlenecks that people face when it comes to moving abroad.
Not for everyone, but like for people who we hope will pay us back. Like, it cannot be for everyone, right? Because you need to de-risk the downside, because people would refuse to pay, right? People refuse to pay back. It's just the way it is. But as I was saying, just to segue back into what is going on in the Eastern African space. We've been talking to a few philanthropists because, of course, think of it this way: you need to share money to you need to make people have money up front.
Yeah,
you need to get that money from somewhere, right? And it's unlikely you get it from a bank because obviously if they give you 7 or 8% interest rate, you need to make sure that your candidates are paying you back significantly more because again, people would not pay back. Some people die,
sadly.
So you have all sorts of things. So any increase in the interest rate on this side or in your liability means you need to significantly improve the upside for yourself. So you need to finance this instrument through, let's say, less costly sources, right? So that could be philanthropy, that could be investors, of course.
VCs, maybe not.
Yeah, of course. It could be VC, but it depends on the VC's risk appetite. Some would in the VC space is very disparate, right? Some VCs want predictable growth.
Growth.
So of course, the case with an ISA is I'm saying I'm going to share your millions in the first year to candidates, and then the second year I'm going to share another even more of your millions. And I've not made any money. I made very little money because not everyone is paying back in the first year or the second year, right? So you need to wait for maybe the 6th year or the 7th year. So all of this needs to be in the model, right? Okay, then now we're in the 7th year. How much am I paying? How much are we getting back? What is the value of the business, right? At that point, there are some VCs who are in the space, especially if we combine that with our already existing B2B business, right? Then it's easier to make a case for one working with the other. But there are some VCs who would say it's not really the direction in which they are going, right? You can look at strategic angel investors, like some companies in the blocked account space or things like that, and hope that they will come on board and help you make that a reality. But if we don't do it, somebody else will do it. So it's one of the most obvious products that you've ever heard of.
Okay. Tell us a bit about what is already obtainable. What are people doing? Because actually this is new for me, I must tell you that. I'm used to hearing funding, scholarship, but not these income shared agreements.
Many people call ISA scholarships, actually. You know that, right? It's a misnomer. In many candidates who actually get ISAs, they call them scholarship. And so as an ISA provider, you need to be very, very clear about what it is. You need to make it. Look at any ISA provider's website, it's bold. This is not a scholarship, right? So but people call them scholarships because people are just amazed that they can get money up front. Right? Like,
I hope they know
from Africa,
payback.
Of course. But if you're from Africa, nobody's ever giving you any money, and then somebody giving you 10K up front, and then just to help you have a better life. Even your parents will not believe it. Your parents will say that there's something. Your parents will say that there's something fishy, right? So anyway, but what's going on around the world? As I said, Malengo is a good example of a non-profit who have put in quite a bit of effort. They have an ISA on the market now. They've had one for about 3 years now.
Where they're based again?
I think they're based in Kenya. They give them to candidates from Kenya, Uganda. I don't remember quite, but maybe Rwanda.
Just students or also?
Students, principally. Students. But I think they're now beginning to look into apprentices.
Okay.
Nursing apprentices,
Okay.
So I know a few people on the board. They're really great people. Really, they've helped a lot in, guiding us and, providing some feedback on certain things and, helping us work on the model because they made quite a few mistakes as well. There are also some legal issues and they are trying to sort of help make it right in our case. And their own ISA model was based off of Chancen International. Chancen International is another non-profit based, I think, still in Kenya. Again, they have so much opportunity. They've been around for much longer, maybe 10 years, I think maybe more. And they have been offering ISAs to candidates around there to come to Europe, but principally Germany again, and cover their study costs. But Chancen International was based off of Chancen AG, which is a German ISA provider, providing ISAs to German students in Germany, right?
I see.
So there's a whole development of, it's an ecosystem of,
that's interesting. Like they came before the Chancen Carta came, if they existed 10 years ago.
Of course. Chancen International is a non-profit that's been around for long, And Chancen AG has been around for even longer. I think it's been around for maybe 20 years, 25 years.
So there's the side in Europe, Germany, and then there's also the side happening in Africa now.
Correct. So as far as financing is concerned, it's not likely that concepts like this will be developed in the West. I mean, they care, but it's not their place to develop them. So I've learned over the last, 6 months that working on any product like this would have to come from, we need a lot of people who have like a particular interest in the migratory pathways. It needs to be people, as I said, there's a lot of philanthropy involved, a lot of philanthropy involved. There's a lot of people who want to see people, have better lives, a lot of very wealthy people.
Good thought, right?
Yes. But again, there's a lot of bureaucracy and they have their own incentives. Obviously. They have their own motivations, which you need to take into consideration. It can be quite unpopular unpleasant. And then you have the people who I prefer, who just want to make money. I much prefer those people who are not trying to do any good deed. And, there the motivation is clear. I'm trying to tell you, you can make more money than you would if you don't do this. With the philanthropists, you never quite know
what's their aim, what's their objective. But at least this one, they just want to make more money.
They want to make more money, and I agree with him. More money is good. So the ISAs, candidates currently get the money. They help them actually find the universities. Yeah. They help them find universities. They guide them to find housing. You cannot help anybody find housing. They need to apply for them. Apply themselves, ask people, as family. They have people to pick them up from the airport and everything. All of that is financed through this ISA, and then when the candidates start working, they pay back. So what we're bringing to the market, and this is very, very important, is primarily making this available to workers and apprentices, and of course adding the agency and employer incentives to our model. Right, employers have a vested interest in making sure you arrive here debt-free in Europe and Germany, DACH region anyway, and they have actually, in some cases, like in the healthcare space, they have gotten together and said, hey, we're going to do this thing called the Gütesiegel faire Fachkräfteanwerbung, or Gütesiegel faire Anwerbung, which is effectively employer pays principle, but they say no nurse should pay anything to come to Germany.
But they are relocation process.
Right. They should pay nothing. They're not paying for their language learning. They are not paying for the taxi that took them to the airport. They are not paying for food and at the airport. They are not paying for their flight. They're not paying for anything. So they are right. They're not paying for so even the apartments where they live when they come, they're provided by the hospital or the agency in some cases. And then their employer covers all of those. Right. So even if you come with your B2 certificate already, they'll refund your money. Right.
They'll reimburse you
for all your expenses, learning the language. So you have that, but again, that's only for qualified nurses, right? The bigger hospitals, most of the market, most of the healthcare institutions in Germany are signed up to that, right? You see the small ones who don't really care, but you're not getting a Helios if you don't have the Gütesiegel. You're not getting an Asclepios or any of the Unikliniken if you don't have the Gütesiegel Fachkräfteanwerbung. You don't have no chance. But now outside of outside of the qualified nurses, so the apprentices, anything else, logistics, train conductors, truck drivers, whatever, they need financing desperately, right? The employers are not going to accept to pay to cover your flight costs to come to. They can maybe share the costs, but no employer,
take it 100%.
Employers would say they want to do it like voluntarily even and impose on everyone else like they do in the healthcare space. They don't want to do that. It's also like it's a cultural thing. Different industries have different cultures, I suppose, and they also need the foreign workers a lot less than the nurses. So the number of nurses that will go through the Ausbildung system between now and 2035 will produce 1/8 of the nurses
needed.
Yeah, conservative estimate will be 1/5 of the nurses needed by 2035. So 4/5 of the nurses that are needed will need to come from elsewhere. Yeah, right. So, and there are many other numbers like that. So of course, the nursing is a bigger bottle, a bigger issue. But again, in logistics and the other thing, it still may be half. It still may be a third. Yeah. So if you're an agency in nursing, an employer will generally pay you maybe 15K per candidate from outside. It's quite lucrative, right, for the agencies. An employer will pay you 15K. Some employers would pay you 20K. Right. In fact, the Bundesagentur für Arbeit charges 22K and above for certain candidates if the candidate from a top nursing school and speaks great German. So the government themselves, if you're an employer, you want the government to give you workers from India, say they would charge 22K per candidate.
That they help you source.
That will help the employer source, yeah. So, but if you go outside nursing, outside Pflege, an employer, some truck logistics company owner would pay you maybe 5K. So you need to find your financing elsewhere. Yeah. So that's where income share agreements and things. As I was telling you, I think it's fair because there's a lot of work involved, right? I think it's fair. I don't think it's anti-Menschheit for an agency to charge some money, which they already do, right? They have these crazy instruments that they say, okay, I'll give you the money cash, but you cannot tell anyone, or they would defer you paying them for their services until you get here and then you start working. So they have all of these things. So you cannot relocate somebody from most of Africa without giving them a loan. Yeah. You cannot. If the employer isn't covering everything, you have to meet them halfway. So these things already exist.
Yeah. So now, what is Work Abroad doing differently or new or bringing on board?
Right. So Advance is our way of saying if you're a candidate, so we'll start by making it B2B. So we have our agency clients and our employer clients. Okay. We'll make it available to them in the system and say, hey, this candidate doesn't have any, instead of giving them a loan, an implicit loan or a hidden loan, which you already do now, the contract is standardized, it's clear, everybody knows what the conditions are. The best case scenario, the employer can say, if this candidate agrees, if they actually are here for 3 years, if they don't leave before, or if they don't do anything crazy, then I'll pay off part of it, right? It's getting that employer involvement in other spheres and standardizing it, making it transparent for all parties. Very important. And saying, okay, this candidate is an apprentice. Let's say if you're coming to Germany from Nigeria as a nursing apprentice, you have no money. Instead of saying, okay, when you get, just standardize, make it clear, make it clean, let her know upfront how much she'll pay when she starts working, as from what date she'll start paying, right? And why it's like that. And I think if it's fair for all parties, people would like it. And really, as I said, the employer and agency involvement have a fundamental effect on the mathematics or the arithmetic of the agreement, right? If an employer is involved, that has an effect on how much the person has to repay because it's less risk. And if the agency is involved, that has some slightly, not as strong as the employer effect, but it's also an effect. It's how much the candidate needs to pay and everything.
So tell me, who are the major risk bearers here in this arrangement? Because there's work abroad involved, then there's the agency and potentially the employer.
Correct.
There is also the candidate involved as well.
Correct, yeah. So the major risk bearer is going to always be work abroad, right? Which is why we'll get most of the upside as well, right? I mean, everybody's involved, right? The candidate is involved, right? Because they have to, if you get into such an agreement, you need to sort of, try to make sure you pay it back. Right? As I said, the plan is to start with a very small cohort of 100 candidates, right? So, and that would mean that we have enough bandwidth to de-risk as soon as, as much as we can, like find the most trustworthy candidates we can find. So nothing bad happens. The employer is involved, but less so because the employer doesn't really,
have anything.
They need to want to. If not, then they're not really involved. And of course the agencies, because they're already giving these loans. So if an agency says, hey, I'm willing to put my hand in the fire, so to speak, to make sure this candidate gets here, then they'll be involved in the risk bearing. But it's principally work abroad and obviously the people who give us the money that we give the candidates.
So you mentioned that for nurses there's already some kind of arrangement for them. So in most cases for qualified nurses, then it's more like good to go. So which sectors or which industry would be the key focus now? Just
to clarify again, and I think I might have mentioned this in the last time I was here. You're not allowed to relocate nurses from Nigeria, right?
That's true. In certain countries.
From certain countries, 55 of them. The WHO list.
Nurses are good, so to speak, to a large extent, right? If you're qualified. And you also mentioned that some countries like Nigeria, they're not allowed to recruit nurses from Nigeria.
Agencies. Employers can do that.
Employers can do that directly, right? And individuals can also apply
to employers.
Employers directly. Okay. So which sector is work abroad focusing on now, since nurses are like not the main focus?
Well, to be fair, or to be quite honest, I don't think the current agreement for nurses will be around forever because it's a very strange concept. It's a very strange agreement. It's a very strange thing they've agreed on, let's say. So,
which agreement do you mean exactly?
The Faire and the Gütesiegel, right? So there are a lot of agencies who have that badge who still charge money and hide. There are a lot of agencies who do a lot of things that they're told not to do. And our job is to talk to them, to talk to the agencies, talk to the employers. So I've spoken to almost every agency in Germany at this point, and many of them know that the other ones are doing these things, and they get angry and then they complain, and then there's some discord, but overall they are still together, right? But can I say, you need to think about it, also makes the balance sheet of the agencies. So in the short term, the agencies who have the Gütesiegel are great, they are doing fine.
They have this Gütesiegel and they're still,
of course, they're still, or they try to come up with other ways. They have another company locally where they charge money, and then they tell the candidates to never say that, etc., etc. So we have all of these things, but it's fine if the other agencies don't know. It's just now slowly it's beginning to come on knowledge that some people are doing these things, other people are doing these other things. And even just financially, I don't think it makes much sense. I think as a migrant myself, I personally benefit the most from migrating is the migrant or the immigrant. Right.
You think so?
I think it's not crazy to expect people to pay to migrate.
Yeah, but don't you think it's Germany that benefits the most because Germany needs the migrant?
I think overall, every individual migrant migrates a lot, gets a lot more out of the equation, monetarily at least, than Germany. Now, as a whole, one could make an argument for a lot of migrants helping Germany more than Germany helps them. But on the micro level, I still think the individual gets a lot more, as I mentioned, each individual gets in lifetime earnings. Nigeria, say, compared to Germany, is at least €1 million difference. Now you're sacrificing other things. I don't like it here. I don't like Europe. I don't like living here all the time, or really any time. But as far as money is concerned, there's nothing you could do in Africa that will make you as much money as migrating, just moving and working elsewhere. If you can go to the US, you'll make probably the most money anyone that's in your family has ever made. If you come to Europe, you'll make a lot of money, many millions.
So tell us, which are the sectors of the most interest?
So nursing apprentices are still a big one.
So Ausbildung.
yeah, physiotherapists.
So physiotherapists as qualified professionals or those who want to?
No, both. So the only thing that's excluded is
qualified nurses.
Qualified nurses. Everything else is target market, let's say, whether it's truck drivers, whether it's logistics, manufacturing jobs, electricians, etc.
Are you going to be offering this to Nigerians?
No, it's unlikely. It's unlikely.
This breaks my heart.
Even if it's Nigerians, you'll probably be like, because it's not just me, it's just pure risk. It's just, risk management.
It's crazy.
You have to think about, we have expertise, right? We have people who give us, who help us in different ways.
Yeah.
But it's just very unlikely that the average Nigerian man will be our model recipient.
And Cameroonian?
Even there, it's difficult, but it's slightly more likely.
What's the problem with Nigerians? Let me not call it problem. What's the concern?
It's just risk management, right? We're just discussing a story here that, gives you an idea. I don't want to bring it on camera, but it's about making everyone's lives easier. It's just easier for me and for, whoever is involved in this endeavor to say, hey, this place is very risky. I don't really want to know if this guy is going to church or not. He's part of this group. And now it's just the way it happens sometimes, right? Even if we were to give loans in Nigeria, right, then you need to look at women are less risky than men.
Okay.
Women tend to pay more. Married women tend to pay, are more, they're more reliable than married men. Married women with children are more reliable than married women without children to pay back. So all these factors: how old is the person, right? What wage is on the contract, and what employer they're going to. What is the default risk of the employer, etc. So the agency, how many candidates today, so you have so many factors that come in. Luckily, we have most of these things already on our platform, right? We have the candidates already, all the information we need. We have the agencies, most of the information we need, and the employers, most already. So we have much of that. We have so much information on, we even know where the candidates live. We know where, where they live when they get here, and where they live before they come. We know the agencies, the addresses, more or less the numbers, how many candidates they move, etc. So you're able to come up with a heuristic, if you want to call it. I'm not inventing anything new, right? This is more or less a science at this point of avoiding usury. So that's what you need to do. So
I'm not sure if you guys are there yet, but if you could just run through some of the key things that people need to have or qualify for them to be able to access this opportunity.
Well, you need a contract. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
You need to have a job, a working contract, whether work or apprenticeship.
Okay.
Again, depending on the risk profile, you might need to already be in Germany.
Oh, you need to already be.
Depending on the risk profile. Depending on the risk profile.
But if you're in Germany, do you still need the money?
That's a good question, and that's something that we're struggling with a bit. But again, it's all product development. It's nothing crazy. Yeah. Some agencies have told us, they prefer that as well. They prefer to disburse the money when the candidate gets here, because sometimes candidates don't show up. Now, do you need the money? It depends on what you need the money for, right?
Yeah, it makes total sense actually to think about it, because it's like for the candidate, you have an assurance that as soon as you're here, you will get the money. So if you find a way to get the money somehow in the interim to get here, then that's already better than nothing at all.
It could be in a blocked account, with the Fintiba people.
Exactly, so it could be in a blocked account. You don't have access to it until you come here. It makes total sense. Yeah,
it's obviously more useful if you have it before, or at least a part before.
Yeah,
I think the guys from some people have proposed like milestone based. So when you start, but like the milestones, like three milestones, and then when you get here, you get the rest of it, etc. Because the agencies who do everything for candidates, and the candidates still don't show up.
It's crazy, right? So I can imagine.
I think last time I was here, I mentioned with the Gütesiegel, the agency covers all the costs. Everything, language, flight, that book the person's flight. Say, hey, now you need to do, just travel from the person doesn't show up, and the agency has lost all the money, right?
No way.
So, and there's many people doing that, right? Because it's free, it's completely free for nurses.
Yeah.
Free. So they just, you lose a bit of appreciation for things that are free. So.
And I guess part of the criteria is not to come from Nigeria.
No, well, we'll see what that means. But again, in the first very, very tiny iteration or cohort, I don't think it's a good idea to be from Nigeria.
Yeah, but maybe for Nigerians, the condition could be that you're here already, and that reduces the risk too, right? If they're here already, they have the job, it reduces the risk already.
Yeah, but again, it's just, is there somebody who's not from Nigeria who has a job? Even if I was Nigerian myself, I still wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't give it to Nigeria?
I still wouldn't give it to Nigeria. Right?
I would give it to Nigeria.
But even as Cameroonian, it's not likely that Cameroon will be there either, right?
Yeah,
it's just tens of thousands of people who are interested. And if you have 100, again, it's the first thing, because the idea is to prove the model with the first batch, the first cohort.
Of course,
you know, to make sure the unit economics makes sense. How much does it cost me to learn, to give this person this money? How much are they paying me back? When does it make? When am I in the black? And then the cohort economics need to make sense. How much am I spending to provide this money to this 100 people.
Yeah.
When are they going to pay me back? When does this particular cohort start paying for the next? Because the idea is that very, very quickly, it needs to start financing itself.
Yeah.
Right. The repayments from a certain number of cohorts, when you have enough cohorts, start being enough to pay for, and then you don't need to fund it anymore with external capital, right?
Yeah.
So that's, you want to get there very quickly, or as quickly as possible. So how do I do that? It's by minimizing default rates. It's by, prioritizing the things that I said, picking the best personas, right? Women with children, who are coming possibly with their husbands together. They have maybe 2 incomes very quickly and can pay back even easier. Things like that, right? To make sure that you're in the green. Yeah.
So it's more like the Chanson-Carter now. You need the point-based system. Something like
correct. Yeah. But tougher than the Chanson. The Chanson-Carter is fairly straight. It's fairly easy. There's a lot that goes into it. A lot. Yeah. That's what needs to set us apart. So the people who are investing in us, or who are trusting us with their money, right? Yeah. Our case is we're picking the best possible candidates. Yeah. All our candidates have contracts. There's no student, right? So they'll start earning from the very first month they get here, right? You can get involved as an employer. We have employers involved. We have agencies involved. That's what sets our model apart from the other ones, where you just give any. Well, you have less stringent. Requirements.
So for the employers and the agencies involved, their role is to make this available to their candidates, essentially, right?
That would be, I assume, most of the first cohort would go through our clients, especially the agencies, because you can imagine an agency doing 600 relocations a year. Yeah, a significant percentage of those candidates need financing. Yeah. So we can do it through them. We are also going to do it B2C, directly to the candidates. So you can go to our website and just go in. It's not launched yet. It's on our website, but it's not. If you go there, we will not be able to begin the process. But when we launch, we'll make it available principally B2B2C, and we'll prioritize that because there we have employer engagement. We have an agency involvement as well, right? They are more likely to co-sign because they are all on the platform already. If you come directly to us and you have your contract and everything, it's also we're open to it, but it's just, again, prioritization. We prioritize de-risk ventures where the employer is involved, agency is involved.
But I find this very interesting, I must say, and maybe because I'm not from Eastern Africa, so that's why I haven't heard so much about the income share agreement, but I think that's something interesting. Although in this case it's not for students, it's more for professionals who have a job. I think that's an interesting development that people can look forward to.
Even in East Africa, it's not like common knowledge or anything like that, right? You still need to be at the right university, and then they'll come there and they'll advertise. You still need the right people. You need to be interested in things like this, right? But still, they have significantly more options than we do in Central and Western Africa, significantly.
Well, guys, if you're watching this, guys, you know what to do. If you're from Nigeria, Cameroon, you also know what's up. Maybe you can consider spending some time in Eastern Africa to know more about this theme set. But thank you so much, Shane, for coming around. I think this is good stuff that people can look forward to. Any final words?
Well, thank you for having me. Just keep checking our website, tryworkabroad.com. If you're an agency or an employer watching this, we have probably already spoken to you, so better you can still reach out and have a chat. If you're a candidate, just keep applying. Again, there's nothing that you can do for yourself that would bring greater emolument financially, at least, than actually relocating for work. There's nothing else that you can do that will bring you more value than moving for work. There's no job in Cameroon I could have done that would have brought me more.
Do you also work with agencies from Africa, Nigeria?
Not Africa. We have a Turkish agency now. We have Turkey, we have Morocco, Tunisia, India. We have a lot of agencies but again, the market isn't really developed in Sub-Saharan Africa like that. Right?
So far, most of the agencies you work with are predominantly from Europe, Germany.
Germany and DACH. And then we have agency people so they also invite their partner agency. Right. So our system makes it so that you can invite your partner agencies. So you can have maybe a large agency here in Germany. They work with a partner in India. They work with a partner in Morocco. So they invite the other partners to our system, and then the partners come in and then they are putting in the candidate profiles in the system.
So they recruit locally in the system.
And then they are going through during that period. The candidates are going through the language training, and then eventually they start placing them at the hospitals, right, and doing the Anerkennungsprozess visa process, the system. So
good stuff.
We have all sorts of agencies, but we have a big one from Turkey, and but Nigeria. We're also not really trying to sell to them. So it's not like I'm looking for Cameroonian agencies to sell to. Right? I have no interest in selling to Cameroon. It's just not. It doesn't strike me as like the best use of my time. They have less money. I cannot really help them much because they want other things. They want places to place the candidate. Right. That's not what I'm selling. I'm selling something else. So
well, guys, it's just business, right? It's nothing personal. Thank you so much, Shane, for coming around. I really enjoyed this conversation. I was gonna say lastly that agencies from Nigeria, other parts of Africa can sign up, but obviously
if they want to act accordingly, right? If they don't want to extort the candidate, they can sort of sign up, right? But mostly they would need to bring their own employers, or because what they want, I can sort of help them with, but it's not what I'm selling.
But maybe one way around it could also be them partnering with companies based here.
Of course.
And then those are now the entities working with work abroad.
Correct. We have agencies who work with agencies in Kenya, for instance. The big problem that we have, like Nigeria and Cameroon, let's say, is the WHO list.
Yeah, and
that's why it's not. The compliance. That's why the markets there are not as developed as elsewhere.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so the agencies have no interest in even touching the 10-foot pole. Those countries. It's not because they have anything against them.
But how about other industries? Because this is just for nurses. I mean, there are also other industries too.
Yeah, but then you probably do business in markets in which you're already familiar, right? So, and like if 70% of pupils or students in a language school are there for nursing, you probably want to work with the students who are trying to come as truck drivers from that same language school. So it's just an ecosystem thing and a market maturity thing. We are just not. That's why there's such a crazy information asymmetry as well in our countries. In India, for instance, everybody knows everything. Every candidate in India knows, Gütesiegel, I'm not paying you anything. If you don't bring me fast, I'm going to the next agency. I know that. I don't owe you any money. Every candidate knows that. You bring me as a nurse, I know you're earning money. Everybody in India knows that. They are so educated on the market dynamics. In Cameroon, they're begging to pay people thousands, right? And they're not wrong, because WHO list says you cannot bring them. So you have to come as an apprentice, and the apprentice positions are very limited. Nurses, there are 1,000 nursing positions. Apprentice positions are significantly more limited than nursing positions, right? Because you need to do a lot of invest. It's 3 years. Not much use at the beginning, etc. But qualified nurses, the demand is significantly stronger.
Awesome, guys. So thank you so much, guys, from wherever you're watching from, and I wish you a nice time. Shane, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.